Stargate should have been a disaster, and still the 1994 sci-fi movie broke box office records, launched over 400 television episodes, and built one of the most devoted sci-fi fan bases in history. But what was happening behind the scenes deserved a show of its own. How did a movie so cursed ever make it to theaters at all? How many of these behind-the-scenes stories will completely change the way you see the film? Join us as we get into 21 of the weirdest facts about Stargate that you have never heard. Number 21. The most expensive paycheck. Kurt Russell is one of the most reliable action stars of his generation. But even reliable stars have limits. When he first read the Stargate script, he thought it sounded like something a drunk Egyptologist would dream up. Ancient aliens? A giant ring? He declined right on the spot. No way he was going to be caught in such a movie. But then the producers were desperate. They needed a recognizable face to anchor their $55 million gamble. So they offered Kurt twice his usual fee. It was huge money, but still, Kurt didn't think it was worth it. He turned it down again.
A terrorist who when part of his plan.
In a final act of desperation, the producers raised the budget by another $2 million. Kurt was now worth $7 million to the producers, and it was now an offer Kurt couldn't refuse. That money in 1994 could have bought a small fleet of F-16s. Instead, it bought a man who still looked slightly confused in interviews but delivered a stone-cold performance that made the whole thing believable. So the hero had to be bribed through the gate. What did the villain do to try to stay out of it entirely? Number 20. $1 million backfire. Jay Davidson was not an actor. He was a London fashion designer who accidentally got an Oscar nomination for The Crying Game. Overnight, he became famous, and he hated it so much. None of the spotlight or constant public judgment appealed to him. He had already made a private decision that The Crying Game would be his first and last film. So when the producers wanted him to play Ra, the alien sun god, Jay wanted nothing to do with it. So he devised a foolproof plan to get rejected. He demanded $1 million. He was certain the number was so outrageous that the production would laugh and move on. But to his shock, they agreed immediately. Jay was now the villain of a job he never wanted. On set, things got worse. His personal assistant, the former bass player for Frankie Goes to Hollywood, disappeared with his phone, his cash, and a large amount of his methadone. Jay became hysterical. He struggled with his lines. At the first screening, he wept. He believed his performance was a disaster, but he couldn't have been more wrong. The final version of Ra, with layered voice distortion, eerie makeup, and that unsettling stillness, became one of the most memorable movie villains of the 1990s. If the villain never wanted to be there, what about the hero who actively hated his own script? Number 19. James Spader's trailer mutiny. James Spader has always played eccentric intellectuals. On Stargate, he played Daniel Jackson, an awkward, brilliant Egyptologist. He took the role for a very strange reason. He thought the original script was so bad that it fascinated him. He has said this out loud in interviews. There was something interesting to him about that level of failure, the potential hidden underneath it. But interesting is not the same as acceptable. When Spader showed up on set, and the dialogue still wasn't working, he made a decision that would have gotten most actors fired. Spader refused to leave his trailer. Not for an hour. He sat inside while the crew waited. Kurt Russell, furious, knocked on the door and asked what he was doing. James told Kurt to admit that the dialogue is horrible.
The same as a scene sitting on a couch, talking to one other person in a small room. You know, I mean, you're still going through the same legwork.
Russell paused, then said, "Of course it's horrible. That's why they pay you $1 million. If it were brilliant, you'd do it for free." The standoff broke, and James later got out. Eventually, the script improved because one stubborn actor refused to accept mediocrity. But what happens when the most famous visual effect in the film is invented by a man who had just been fired? Number 18. Iced tea came to the rescue. Most fans don't know this, but the single most iconic effect in Stargate, the explosive energy burst, was created in a garage by a man who no longer worked on the movie. VFX supervisor Jeffrey Okun was hired by the digital effects company Kleiser-Walczak. From day one, he and director Roland Emmerich clashed. Jeffrey would pitch concepts, while Roland rejected them. Eventually, they agreed to test something in a garage, a 3-foot circular plexiglass tank filled with water and iced tea mix, which is because the brown-tinted liquid caught light beautifully, and a drill attached to a 2x4 board to spin it. Roland hated the footage.
Because you get a very good feeling very early, how you can film a certain room.
And so he fired Jeffrey on the spot. But Jeffrey did not leave. Instead, he and his crew kept experimenting. They found an air motor, and they connected a pipe to the tank. The first blast fired too much air pressure, and the entire liquid contents exploded outward, drenching the director of photography, David Stump. They cleaned up. They adjusted the pressure to exactly 2.1 pound per square inch. They fired again, and the camera captured it. That kinetic, violent, beautiful burst of liquid energy became the signature effect. If the portal effect came from a fired man with iced tea, what else did the production jury rig on a budget? Number 17. The Stargate looked like a giant tire. The title prop is the most important object in a film, the thing the entire story revolves around. Now imagine it painted black. That was the original Stargate. According to Dean Devlin, speaking in the DVD audio commentary for the Ultimate Edition, the first full-scale prop was painted black. Everyone agreed that nothing about it said portal to another dimension. So then they repainted it. Multiple rounds of silver, gray, and metallic finishes followed before they arrived at the iconic ring that audiences remember. But paint was the least of their problems. The original design for the Stargate was not even a circle. The early concept drawings showed a triangle, a tall, obelisk-like structure meant to stand on its tip like an ancient monument. Then Roland decided that he wanted a dialing sequence. He wanted glyphs rotating into position, chevrons locking with mechanical clanks, tension building with every click. There was just one problem. A triangle cannot spin. Geometry slammed the door on that idea immediately. The design shifted to a circular ring, then to a double ring with an inner rotating section and a fixed outer ring. What audiences almost got was an immobile, triangular paperweight that nobody could figure out how to turn on. If the gate almost looked like a pyramid on its tip, what other strange locations did this film borrow for its sets? Number 16. Roland Emmerich hated CGI. It's so impossible to believe that the man who would later blow up the White House with computer-generated aliens in Independence Day initially refused to use computers at all. The tension between Roland and his effects team was constant. Jeffrey would present a concept, and Roland would say no every time. The director wanted everything to be physical. He wanted the Stargate to be a real spinning prop. He wanted the pyramids to be miniatures. He wanted the desert landscapes to be real locations. He had to be convinced by a single test shot, a CGI demonstration of what the gate's event horizon could look like, that computers might actually be useful. That embrace of technology would later define his career as Robert became one of the most famous CGI directors in Hollywood. But for Stargate, most of the magic was handmade. Miniature pyramids, physical explosions, and that iced tea tank in a garage. If the director hated computers, how long was the original cut before he edited it down? Number 15. The original rough cut was over 3 hours. Every long movie starts as an even longer movie. Stargate was no exception. When Roland Emmerich and his editors first assembled all the footage they had shot, they sat down in a dark room and watched the entire thing from beginning to end. The runtime? Over 3 hours. Nearly 40 minutes of material would eventually have to be removed to get the film down to a theatrical runtime of just under 2 hours. What got cut? Quite a lot. There was an expanded backstory for Ra, more scenes showing his alien origins and his relationship with the human host he possessed. There was a longer subplot about the military trying to shut down the Stargate program in Washington. There was a much bigger desert battle outside a city called Nagata, with additional action sequences and character moments. There was also a longer, more emotional farewell between Daniel Jackson and the boy Skara. Some of this footage was restored for the film's director's cut, which runs about 130 minutes. Till now, the full 3-hour version has never been officially released, but part of what was cut out was an even darker ending to the movie. Number 14. A darker alternate ending was filmed. At the end of Stargate, the team escaped Abydos in victory, but in an alternate version of the film, the ending was very, very different. Something darker. Dean Devlin, the film's co-writer and producer, originally wrote an ending that would have shocked audiences and left the door firmly shut on any sequel. In Dean's original script, Ra does not die quietly.
We think you can figure this out. We think you're going to have more fun getting involved and putting your brain to work rather than just sitting back and saying, okay, blow me away.
Before his final defeat, he manages to launch an American nuclear warhead, one that had been sent through the Stargate earlier in the film back to Earth. But he does not send it back as is. He uses his alien technology to make the warhead 100 times more powerful. The final shot of the film would have shown the bomb detonating inside the underground military base in Colorado. A massive explosion with the mountain collapsing, where everyone would pass away. But when audiences heard the script, they hated the idea immediately and saved us the trauma of watching all the heroes never get a happy ending. Speaking of things that almost happened, who else was almost cast in these roles? Number 13. The producer's choices. The Stargate that audiences saw in 1994 is not the Stargate that was supposed to exist. Before Kurt Russell and James Spader anchored the film, the producers chased a very different set of stars. Some were offered the roles and others were approached. All of them said no, and their rejections shaped the film that eventually made it to theaters. Sean Connery was offered the role of Colonel Jack O'Neill. This was 1994. Sean was 2 years removed from The Last Crusade and fresh off Rising Sun. The gravitas alone would have been extraordinary. He passed. Wesley Snipes, at the height of his action star ascent, just before Demolition Man had cemented his status, was also approached. He declined. Kurt Russell was offered the role multiple times and turned it down repeatedly before finally agreeing to take it for $7 million. For Daniel Jackson, the stuttering Egyptologist, Matthew Broderick was considered. Matthew, still carrying enormous goodwill from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, would have brought a lighter, more comedic quality to the role. He couldn't commit. And for Ra himself? Sir John Gielgud, one of the great stage actors of the 20th century, was discussed. Instead, a fashion designer who demanded $1 million to get rejected got the part. The version of Stargate you love survived a long series of no's. Of the actors who did make it into the film, how many carried their roles over to the TV series? Number 12. Almost no one wanted to star again. The 1994 film Stargate launched a television franchise that ran for 17 seasons across 4 separate shows: SG-1, Atlantis, Universe, and Origins. That is over 400 episodes of television. But almost no one from the original film came along for the ride. When MGM decided to turn the movie into a weekly series, they recast almost every single role. Kurt Russell did not return. James Spader did not return. Even Jay Davidson, who played Ra, was long gone. The TV show needed new faces, new interpretations, and new contracts. It was only 2 actors from the 1994 film that played the same characters in Stargate SG-1. The first was Alexis Cruz, who played Skara, the young Aberdonian boy who befriends Daniel Jackson. Cruz reprised the role in multiple episodes of SG-1. The second was Eric Avari, who played Kasuf, Skara's father and the leader of the Aberdonian people. Avari also returned for guest appearances. That is it. 2 actors. Everyone else, including the lead roles of O'Neill and Jackson, was recast. Richard Dean Anderson took over as Jack O'Neill, now spelt with 2 L's. Michael Shanks became the new Daniel Jackson. Now let's go back to the very beginning. Where did this idea even come from? Number 11. 2 heads became 1. Many people don't know this, but Stargate was the brainchild of 2 completely different films that had no business being combined. The first came from the mind of Roland Emmerich, a film student sitting in a Munich classroom in 1978, watching a documentary based on Erich von Däniken's Chariots of the Gods. Roland began developing a concept he called Necropolis, a film about a spaceship buried under the Great Pyramid connected mysteriously to local children who had gone missing. It was strange and ambitious. It was also completely unfundable. He shelved it. The second film idea belonged to Dean Devlin. He was not a director or a writer at the time. He was a cast member on Roland's 1989 sci-fi thriller Moon 44. Dean's idea was something he described as Lawrence of Arabia on another planet, a hero chasing a villain through a wormhole into a world already conquered, already enslaved, epic in scope. When Roland and Dean finally talked, they realized their two visions had something unexpected in common: a device, a mechanism of transportation. And so they decided to center the whole story on that device. If the idea was a Frankenstein creation, how did they convince anyone to pay for it? Number 10. A French lie. Hollywood is built on lies, but this one was very bold. When Roland and Dean pitched Stargate, studios estimated it would cost $100 million. They insisted they could do it for $50 million. No one believed them. They finally found a champion in producer Mario Casar, but funding was still shaky. So Dean told their French co-production partner that the budget was $25 million. He knew it would cost twice that. By the time the French discovered the real number, they were already emotionally invested. They didn't back out. That lie built a billion-dollar franchise. With the money secured and production rolling, what strange language did the opening scene use for no reason? Number 9. The unnecessary language. The film opens in 1928 when archaeologists in Giza uncover the Stargate. They speak to each other in a language that is not English, not French, not Arabic. They speak Swedish, and nobody involved in the production has ever explained why. Not Roland, not Dean, not the casting director. It's a mystery that has persisted for 3 decades. Theories abound. Maybe it was a nod to a Swedish crew member. Maybe it was just a random choice, but no one has ever confirmed. It simply is. From a mysterious language to a mysterious building. Where did they film the underground military base? Number 8. The military base was built inside the Spruce Goose Dome. The vast underground facility housing the Stargate, all those catwalks, control rooms, and cavernous spaces had to be built somewhere. That somewhere was the Spruce Goose Dome in Long Beach, California. The dome was originally built to house Howard Hughes's H-4 Hercules, the largest wooden aircraft ever constructed. Howard flew it exactly once. The dome sat mostly empty for decades. Then Stargate turned it into a secret military base. There's a strange poetry there. A building built for impossible human ambition became the set for a story about humans discovering something far beyond their ambition.
I think we have to begin to reevaluate everything we've come to accept about it.
Inside that dome, they needed to make an alien planet look populated. How did they do it without enough extras? Number 7. A makeshift cast. The alien planet of Abydos was filmed somewhere so remote, hot, and expensive to fill with people, the Yuma, Arizona desert. The budget did not stretch to enough background extras for every wide shot, so the production team improvised. They placed scarecrows and cloth-covered stick figures in the distant dunes. If you watch certain wide shots of Abydos, those distant figures moving slightly in the wind are not human beings. They are mannequins arranged by a crew doing their best with what they have. It worked. No one noticed, as the film broke records anyway. The audience didn't notice the scarecrows, but early test audiences noticed something else. How badly did they hate the movie? Number 6. Test screenings were a disaster. Before Stargate became a cultural phenomenon, it screened for test audiences who did not love it. Test screenings are a standard part of Hollywood. That score can determine whether your film lives or dies. For Stargate, the score was terrible. Only 40% of people in early screenings responded positively. That is not a bad score. That is a catastrophe. The timing could not have been worse. The production companies behind Stargate, Canal Plus, and Carolco were already in serious financial difficulty.
You're on. Me?
A box office failure would have been genuinely catastrophic, not just for the film, but for the companies themselves. Almost no one involved believed Stargate would succeed. Then it opened. On its opening weekend, Stargate set the record for the highest-grossing October opening weekend in cinema history at that time. It turned out that the audience that fills theaters on opening weekend is not the same as the audience assembled in a focus group room. One famous critic was not fooled by the box office numbers. How much did Roger Ebert hate this movie? Number 5. A 0-star review. Roger Ebert was the most influential film critic in America. His thumbs up mattered more than almost any advertising campaign. His thumbs down could sink a movie. Roger gave Stargate a 0-star review and named it one of his most hated films of 1994, the same year it broke box office records. He called it a movie that thinks it's smarter than it is. The audience disagreed violently. The franchise went on to produce over 400 television episodes, novels, comics, and games. Ebert didn't like it. Both things are completely true. Sometimes art finds its exact audience with a precision that bypasses every official arbiter of quality. Critics were the least of their problems. A lawsuit almost killed the franchise before it began. Number 4. A close call to court. In 1995, just as Stargate was beginning its transition from film to television franchise, a man named Omar Zudi filed a lawsuit against the production companies. Omar was an Egyptology student. His claim was serious, that Stargate had plagiarized his unpublished manuscript, a story called Egyptscape. He was seeking damages of $149 million. This was not a small nuisance claim. This was a nuclear bomb aimed at the heart of a fledgling franchise. The timing could not have been worse. The studio was actively developing Stargate SG-1. If the lawsuit had succeeded, or even stalled long enough to create sufficient legal uncertainty, the entire expansion of the franchise could have been restructured or abandoned. Every major franchise exists within a narrow window of momentum. SG-1 premiered in 1997. 3 years after the film. If legal battles had consumed those 3 years, if the energy and resources required to fight a major intellectual property claim had drained the creative oxygen from the room, the show might never have been made.
You understand this complicates things.
The lawsuit was ultimately dismissed. The judge ruled that Zudi had not provided sufficient evidence of plagiarism. With the legal threat gone, the creators could finally make their planned sequels. Except they didn't. Why? Number 3. The film was supposed to be a trilogy. Roland and Dean never intended Stargate to launch a television series. They were film guys. They thought in 3 acts, not 300 episodes. Their original plan was a trilogy. The first film, the one audiences saw in 1994, introduced the Stargate, the aliens, and the rebellion on Abydos. The second film would have gone bigger, much bigger. According to interviews with Dean, the second Stargate film would have explored Mayan civilization, pyramids in Central America, ritual sacrifice. The same alien influence that had shaped Egypt, it turned out, had also shaped the ancient Americas. The third film would have been the combination of everything, every major mythological system in human history, Egyptian, Mayan, Greek, Norse, all of it would have traced back to a single extraterrestrial origin. One truth beneath all the stories humanity had ever told about gods. That was the vision. Then MGM chose a television series instead. Stargate SG-1 premiered in 1997 and ran for 10 seasons, producing more story and more depth than any trilogy could have contained. The television universe expanded the mythology in directions Roland and Dean probably never imagined. But the 3-film arc was never completed. Somewhere in a parallel 1994, there is an ending we never got. If the trilogy never happened, something else did. Something that quietly changed the entire internet. Number 2. Another first for the show. Back in 1994, the internet was not yet the internet that people know today. There was no social media, and most people had never heard of the World Wide Web. Sure, universities and military researchers used it, and a few early adopters explored it in their spare time. But Hollywood didn't use it at all. There was nothing like studio social media teams. Then Dean Devlin did something that no one in Hollywood had ever done before. Dean built a website for Stargate, and it was the first official movie website in history. The site contained photographs, promotional materials, and behind-the-scenes content. By 2024 standards, it would have been almost comically simple. A few pages, some text, a handful of images, but in 1994, it was genuinely unprecedented. Dean saw something on the internet before almost anyone else in the industry. He understood that this new technology could reach people directly, without the mediation of newspapers, television advertising, and print campaigns. People found the site, explored it, and told their friends. This last fact is about the man who made the film sound as epic as it looked. Number 1. The James Bond composer. The music of Stargate is sweeping, grand, and unforgettable, but it was someone's first job. Composer David Arnold was a record store clerk in England when he scored The Young Americans in 1993. Ronald and Dean heard it and offered him Stargate with almost full creative freedom. David wrote themes that would define the franchise for decades. After that, he went on to score 5 James Bond films: Tomorrow Never Dies, 1997, The World Is Not Enough, 1999, Die Another Day, 2002, Casino Royale, 2006, and Quantum of Solace, 2008. From a clerk at a record store to the man behind the James Bond sound, all because an Alien Portal movie gave him his first shot. Which of these facts blew you away? And if you had been on that set, would you have stayed or walked away? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.